busy academic and home schedules. Thank you if there are members of the collaborative specialization graduate class here today. It's great that you can join us. I know that there are many IDS and CCDS faculty members here today, and it's also great to see you all here. And then I think we have friends, partners in our NGO community, and alumni who are here today too. And it's particularly great to see you join us for our Al Berry Lecture this year. I just want to say, just before I hand over the virtual podium to Leslie to introduce our speaker, a few words about why we have named this lecture after Al Berry. And who is Al Berry? Most of you won't know who this person is. And unfortunately, Al wasn't able to come today, but let me just say a few words about Al. He has been an integral and beloved member of our IDS community right from its beginning. He was a founder of the program, of the IDS co-op program, which was the first IDS program at the Scarborough campus in 1984, along with, and he is an economist by training, but a development economist. And he, along with soil scientists and political scientists and linguists and historians and scholars of literature, came together and developed this wonderful interdisciplinary program in IDS. So he is beloved as a founder. He was also an amazing instructor. He is a world-class scholar on Latin America, on land, on small-scale agriculture, but he is also an amazing instructor, teacher, and mentor for students, and has been throughout his entire career at UTSC. And he has mentored many students after they have graduated and has remained friends with many, many students after they graduated. So we all owe a real debt of gratitude to Al for his pioneering work in this field and his pioneering work in our program. And so it's always a pleasure for us to host this lecture in his name every year. So Al, I know you're not here, but thanks again, as we do every year to them. So I think I will now hand the podium, virtual podium, over to Leslie, who will introduce our speaker. I think the lecture, once the lecture takes place, I think the format after that is to have a period of time for questions. So I would particularly encourage our students in the AO1 class to drum up your courage and ask all sorts of interesting and challenging questions to our speaker. And then I think at the end, there will be a few words of thanks from some faculty members at CCDS. So Leslie, I'll hand the floor over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Speaking of questions, for those of you who would like to, if you have a question in mind and during the talk, feel free to use the chat box and post your question there. My TA teams are monitoring those activities, so we will gather some of those questions to present to Ruth at the end of the talk. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Professor Ruth Oniang'o. Ruth is a researcher in food and nutritional scientist, and she's educated in Kenya and in the US, and she has worked locally and internationally with a focus on Africa. She is the laureate of the prestigious African Food Prize, and she's the holder of Kenya's Silver Star and Distinguished Service Medal for her service with the Kenyan Parliament. Ruth founded the Rural Outreach Africa initiative in the early 90s and continues to be a clear and profound voice in research for development as an international consultant and speaker. Ruth is the founder and editor of one of the earliest open access journals from Africa, named African Journal of Food, Agriculture, Nutrition, and Development, also known as ACHFAN. The journal, incidentally, is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, I found from Ruth. And I am happy to say that I actually have the honor of being involved in the early days of this journal. And that's how I came to know Ruth and continue to learn from her. Now, with this journal as the platform, Ruth seeks to improve policy and decision-making through the dissemination of scientific findings and emerging technology in the field. And the journals really serve as a vehicle for training and mentoring the new generations of food researchers in Kenya and across the continent. Now, for her other rural project, Rural Outreach Africa, she works in Western Kenya, harnessing the intellectual resources of universities in Kenya and connecting them to communities to improve the livelihoods of the rural poor. And through this project, through the many programs in the Rural Outreach Africa, Professor Oniang'o has transformed the lives of many rural families in the districts of Western Kenya and the surrounding regions. The Rural Outreach Africa interventions have also addressed a variety of issues, including nutrition, food security, wealth creation, women economic power, environment, water and sanitation, and HIV/AIDS, housing, education, and poverty. Ruth is really passionate about research for development and mentoring young voices and young African scholars in the field of food system, and she's always eager to share her expertise. But she is really the happiest when she's with smallholder farmers in their farms and at home, sharing and exchanging knowledge. Again, I'm deeply appreciative that that Ruth is taking the time to speak with us. It's past midnight at her time, but Ruth is full of energy, and I'm sure we'll enjoy your talk very much. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Paul. And I'm happy to make this lecture. I must say that through this medium of Zoom, this is the first time I'm actually giving a lecture. I've given talks, I've been on panels, and attended board meetings, you know, and we talk through Skype, Zoom, and Teams, and it's just amazing how the world is today. And I know I should be in Toronto by now. Leslie, you had invited me before Corona became a reality, and yes, I would have come, but that's the way things are at the moment. So I'm happy to connect with you all. Let me just welcome everyone and say Jambo. It's just after midnight here in Nairobi, and we are just beginning to open up, although schools and colleges are still closed, but the economy is just beginning to open up slowly. And we also thank God, really, that things didn't become worse than they are at the moment as far as Corona is concerned. And the worst that had been feared has not yet become a reality. We don't know whether it will or not, but we're just all being cautious and observing the advisory that is given. And so as soon as it opens up, I hope you will all be keen to come and visit us in Kenya. Yeah, so the title of my conversation today, I discussed with Leslie, and I wondered, you know, what shall we make it so that people can be attracted to it? And I may not even talk much about it. Is 3 meals a day feasible for everyone? I always think about food, and especially during this Corona time right now, I became aware that it is hunger that will hit people more than anything else, because our government immediately started talking of social distancing. Look, Africans cannot social distance. They started talking about wearing masks. Oh my goodness, where shall we get them? You know, and sanitizing, washing with soap. And I came out and I said, wait a minute. You are now even closing businesses, and you are, you know, making sure that people don't even go to work, and you are destroying their places of trade. And many of our people are in the informal sector. you know, and they send remittances to the rural areas for the parents and for their family members to be able to you know, to actually exist. But now you are stopping all that. It is hunger that will kill people more than corona. So I came out there and I was trying to advise my government that you have to look at the food systems, food distribution, you know, markets, and so on, and just don't ignore that bit. And I'm happy that very, very quickly they brought in a new minister for agriculture, and he started to address opening up for the food distribution especially, and for the value chain, and where the inputs going to come from, so that we are able to, you know, continue with agriculture, especially in March. That's when our farmers were ready to plant. You know, the rains were coming, they were heavy, and it's like curfew was there and everybody stay in your house, and it just wasn't going to work. Yeah, so I know food is critical. Food is the first medicine. And I started to talk about food being the first medicine. And I didn't know that as Corona came, that actually the first thing is going to attack is the immune system. So it's become very relevant. And so when I was talking about this, thinking about the title, you know, I thought about the hunger that I see all the time, even without Corona. You know, there's one thing that has always disturbed me, that made me go into this profession, was just seeing children especially hungry, and wondering what can be done about it. And also realizing that even as I've now grown much older, I just turned 74, that, you know, the more we talk about eliminating hunger, the more it just stays the same or it becomes worse, you know. So what is it that we're not doing right? Yeah. So I get preoccupied with that. And even when I travel a lot, it's just always going to talk about hunger. And the work I do in Western Kenya, actually, even though it's just concentrated in Western Kenya, it gives me an opportunity to share what we see on the ground. And some of the issues are just the same. I mean, you know, the principles of it, and they are really the same. You know, the specificities may be different, the context may be different, but when it comes to most of the Africa that I live in, and when I travel to different countries, you can see what women go through trying to feed their families, and how the smallholder farmers suffer. And it's not that we don't have resources, but it's just how the resources are not managed properly. And that has become very clear also during this Corona. So when Leslie told me about Al Berry, you know, I did some reading about him, and please give him my very warm regards. You know, I would have loved to meet him. But something I took from his, something he wrote in 2009 when you are celebrating 25 years of this program, you know, he said, getting going and keeping going. I guess that's what I'm doing also. Getting going and keeping going. I'm supposed to be retired right now, but the issues I deal with are not yet retired, you know. They still require a voice. And some of the issues we need to remind young people, especially where we have come from. Sometimes I sit in meetings and I listen and I say, I thought I had this years back. It's still the same thing. So, you know, so long as we still are okay mentally and we are active and we can share, there's a lot to share. And that's why for me, teaching is absolutely critical. And it's the one thing I miss most, you know, just standing in front of a class and talking to young people. I miss that. So my mentoring is mostly virtual, but also for Kenyans, we do it one-on-one. Yeah, and so when we talk about when we remember also Al Berry, and I know he's still alive, and I picked out again from that writing he did, talking about how we need different disciplines, to solve world problems. He's a development economist himself, but when he came together with his colleagues, with his friends, and said, we need the hard sciences, we need the physical sciences, we need the social sciences, we need the practical aspects that people in the NGO world work on, and it's very interesting because it fits into what I do already. So when I get mentees come to me, they will come, they will usually be students who are maybe upper second class or first class who want to advance their education, to go into higher skills education. And so I get them to sit in the office, we talk, I send them to meetings, and we work on the journal. But before they leave, they must go to the field. They really must go to the field because that's where reality is. And you just find that two begin to go together, because even for me, my own work, Rural Outreach Africa, I had gone to the field. I've learned so much by just leaving the so-called ivory tower and going to the field. And then you see the two actually beginning to merge. And then he also mentioned there that even for those who do practical work, when you are in the field, you also need the theory, you need the academic to support what you do. And so the work we do then, we are not just any non-government organization, but we have a non-government organization managed by, started and managed by myself, who is an academic. And so whenever we set up a program, it has to be such that students can be attached to it to collect data. The way we design it, they should be able to come, master's degree students or PhD, they can come, be attached and collect data, which they can then write up a thesis or be able to publish. We do the same with the interns who come from overseas. We've had some from the US, we've had some from Germany, and the last one we had was from France. They come and they attach themselves, they collect data. We have young people who have been trained, who are able to collect this data. And so when we present this then to policymakers to be able to influence policy or to make policies, we say, you see, it is actually science-based. It's not just guesswork. It's well designed. We have collected data in a good way. And that way also the people we work with on the ground, when you explain this to them, they have been involved already. They find it much, much easier to also accept in that sense. Now, just a bit about Professor Leslie Chan. We first met about 20 years ago. He came to Nairobi and brought together like editors and managers of 30 journals. And there I was with some of my people, and we were going through training because really, we just started a journal. We just got mentored by managers of another journal here in Kenya, the East African Medical Journal, which has since collapsed because they didn't go digital. So we started a journal, and when he came, we were thinking our third issue. So we trained, and then I remember towards the end, we said, what do we do? I've just started this journal. We have print versions. We stay in the office up to midnight trying to beat some deadline. And then it comes out and you still find a mistake in the title. What do you do? Then distribution was also a problem. And then at that time, the whole issue of digital, web writing was coming up. And I just sat there, I think it was on the last day of our training, and I said, either I wind this up completely, stop doing it, or we go internet. We just go web. And actually we did, and like from there, the rest is just history. And as we have gone on, you have to work with the standards and what do we do so that even our own people can actually manage it? And the journal essentially for me was that we need to have something to capacity build our young scholars. Secondly, for African scientists in this field to share their work internationally. But then the journal needed to be international. And then also, I personally had a hard time getting my work published. But then, you know, like an academic, even here, they tell us, oh, you know, either you publish or perish. But then I asked myself, but where I publish, who reads what I publish? You know, who reads what I write out there? I need my own governments. You know, we need our policymakers. We need our scholars. We need ourselves here in Africa to be able, we need to share with them what we do so that they can actually use it and put it into practice. And so it's been quite a journey. And so the role actually Professor Chan provided was to quality assure us. And that gave us legitimacy, you know, through BioLine. And so they used to go through our work. They would point out mistakes. We used to have some mistakes in what was coming out initially. We would correct it, and thank God with online publishing, you can correct, but sometimes they spring up out of nowhere, the same mistake. And really it's like you just nurtured us, you helped us to move on, to grow, and eventually we were able to be weaned off, and we can now pride ourselves in our 20th year. Leslie, be able to say that we are now, I don't know what we are young adults now. And I really want to thank you for that. And we found that there's a lot there for people to share. There's a lot that people want to write about. But at the same time, you have to make sure it meets certain standards. I mean, if our journal does not meet those standards, then it's no good to anyone. We have a lot of predatory journals out there. But, you know, some people come to us and they said, my paper can't go forward, you know, because when I went for promotion interview, they told me that I published in the wrong journal. So can you pick this one up? And we say, sorry, we can't do that, because then it will still appear there and it will appear in ours as well. So the journal then has become like a baby for me. You know, it's like I carry it around. It helps, I think, my brain cells because stay active. But there are also initially, during the initial days, there were those who were saying, but Ruth, what will happen to the journal? You know, whenever I looked for funding, what will happen to the journal when you have died? You know, I should have died like 20 years ago, 18 years ago. And they said, look here, I believe in passing the baton. I used to be a runner. I used to be a sportswoman. And my best sport was relay race, you know. And one time I was watching the US team and the Jamaicans running, and Jamaica beat the US. The US had the fastest runners in their 4x4 race, but Jamaica beat the US. And because of the passing of the baton, how you pass that baton as you move on and you leave it with the younger people, and that's you know, an analogy I use all the time as I mentor. Yeah, but also with the journal, it helps us to connect internationally. So I get requests, you know, from overseas, you know, Ruth, can you give us students, or we are looking for this and we are looking for this. It could be from Canada, it could be from the US, you know, but I have a huge network. You know, I have a huge record of people who actually connect with us through the journal. And so that in itself gives you a lot of discipline. And the students come out having done their master's degree and their PhD, and they say, you know, just use us to publish your first article. Once you do that, it's a lot easier then to publish subsequent articles, and you can also publish them elsewhere, because we work with them very closely to make sure that they own the article and they do those particular corrections. Yeah. And when I went to study foods and nutrition in the US, whenever you asked me, Ruth, what are you going to do when you go back home? And it was very important for me to get back to Africa. I had promised my parents, first of all, that I would get back because my parents had lost 6 children to malaria. It's like my family has a strain of malaria, which just kills, you know, and malaria still kills a lot of children. Here in Africa, we still don't have a real cure for it. You know, you suffer it, you swallow medicines, and you still suffer it. Yeah. So my parents I had seen them suffer. I had seen them mourn the death of their children. As I said, I would come back. I will come back. So that is one. But also, I would say I'm going back to Africa because I want to read Africa on malnutrition and hunger. Surprisingly, that hasn't happened. And I don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. But then as you grow older, I guess you grow wiser as well. So now I say, look, even if I lived for 1,000 years, I'm not going to get rid of all the world problems, but at least I can make a difference. I can make my own contribution where I can. And so that's why after I did applied research in the field, I saw the problems. And thereafter I asked myself, so what? What do I do now? And then I formed this Rural Outreach Africa, and so we use it. I'm not a salaried employee of the organization. I made that decision a long time ago, but it provides a stepping stone for many young people who come out and they have nowhere to go, or when they go for a job, they are asked, so where have you worked? You know. Or they need a letter of recommendation, or they just need somewhere to go. You know, we have a lot of books, we have libraries, you can now get that through some don't even have laptops, but they can access the internet through my office. You know, there are meetings going on, I connect them to those meetings, and they just learn a lot by being in my office. And then when they are ready to move on or to go for a master's degree or to go to a job, you know, they know that they can rely on a letter of recommendation from me, you know. So that's part of mentoring, but also that's part of nurturing young people and the next generation, so that you are providing them with an opportunity to move on. Yeah. So, and it's not as if I advertise it, you know, for some reason, just people find me, and if we gel, and if I see an interview and I see that you are keen to move on and you know where you want to go, then I take you on. Some, we may have some funding to give them at least bus fare. And for others, if they come from families who are able, we tell them, look, just use the office and we don't have to do it to provide anything else to you. So that is how the journal actually has been able to promote the cause. But also as we publish, we have got a lot of feedback. Like I can give an example of someone writing from Namibia on dairy. He had a dairy paper with us, and he said, please, I really, really want that paper published quickly. I'm trying to convince my government to start a dairy commission. And they are not keen, they are not sure that is the right thing to do, but I need that paper published. And so we did publish the paper, and he came back to us and thanked us that he used that to convince the policymakers that they needed a dairy industry, and then now it happened. We find that in many places. At the same time, you know, when people publish with us, they are also able to actually get promoted, you know, where people were just so excited, they actually get promoted. When we started and we were small, and we were now online, some, you know, scientists will write to us and say, oh, the panel interviewing me is not going to believe that this is a legitimate journal. Can you send me a copy? You know, so we would actually print, stamp on it, and then send to them. And then I would tell them, just tell them they're a bit behind. You know, the technology is catching up with us right now. They better do something. Nobody does that anymore. So, and they can find us anytime now. They can find us online, and we're legitimate. You know, Ghana, one of my very first mentees, had a master's degree. He came to a conference in Nairobi. He was amazed by the journal, and he just stayed on. He went to do his PhD. He's been reviewing for us. I went to the University of Ghana to give a lecture, and there he was the dean. And he was telling me that now the University of Ghana at Legon has actually accepted to taken on the AJ Fund as one of the journals that are legitimate to publish in. And now he's moved on. He does most of his publishing was with us. He's moved on, and now he's a vice chancellor at a new university. And he says he owes all that to AJ Fund. Yeah, and then when you then have others who don't recognize you, like we had, for a long time, we didn't get papers from South Africa. We didn't get any manuscripts from South Africa. And it's because they said, oh, you are not in Medline, you know, you are not indexed, and so on. So one time, one of my colleagues in the office who work, my deputy who works with me on the journal, told me, Prof, I've just been looking up South Africa. The South African Higher Education has accredited the journal. So now we are getting a lot of manuscripts from South Africa. So, you know, it just goes on like that. You know, the African Union has it. So right now, I can say it's really been a great journey. I'm personally very proud of it, and how I started it. I just dreamt, woke up, and I started. But now here we are, but also with the support of many, many friends. And Leslie, thank you. And of course, I asked you are going to write a keynote address, guest editorial this year, marking our 20 years. Yeah, and then the NGO carried the journal for quite a while, but now they are separated. You know, the NGO had gone around doing research or going to supervise my students at their own teaching practice, and I just saw people doing things differently in another part of Kenya. And I said, that's what I want to do now in my part of Kenya. I needed now to go back to where I was born. So I was born in Western Kenya. And it is a high production area, high potential, but also high production. You know, it's like a food basket of Kenya. Yet we have malnutrition, we have hunger, we have 2 rainfalls per year, you know, in Western Kenya. You know, until sugarcane came in, sugarcane production. Sugarcane growing is usually in areas which are highly fertile with a lot of rainfall. And so that actually was okay, and it was good for the first 10 years. Unfortunately, later on, now when I went to do the action research, when I do the surveys, and you begin to see children not as healthy as they should be and what's going on, yeah, I was able to find that really it had eaten up most of the land that would grow food. You would assume that they'll get money and that money would buy food. The diversity of food diets was affected, and families were left with very little space, especially the women, to grow any vegetables or other food crops. Sugarcane takes 2 years to mature, and it will be mostly the men who go and collect the money. That has changed drastically, by the way, since our constitution of 2010. The gender dimension has changed. And, you know, because even women now have better land rights. Culturally, no, but legally, yes. So we now have that, there's a fight between the culture and the legal, but we have made a lot of progress, you know, since 2010. So now, what we then decided is that I can't just sit back, and I'm seeing children have big stomachs and they're not looking good, and the women also were really suffering, and I said, I'm going to form this non-governmental organization. And so that's what I did. And fundraising is a different matter, but look, I commit most of my time. It's just personal passion, personal commitment. I'm the main fund resource mobilizer, but also as I get the young people to go to the field, and many times I'm with them just to say, look, we cannot bring about change at a family level, at community level, unless we do advocacy, unless we make farmers, we make the men and women our friends, and they believe in our message, and we also agree to learn from them, that we don't have all the knowledge, they have a lot also. And I can tell you that I've become wiser. I've been the student as I've gone to the community. I can humbly say that, and I've been privileged, you know. I think, Paul, when you are talking about thanking the gods for your land, I thank my gods that I was able to go back as an academic to the community, to people, many of whom can't even read or write, you know, and be humble myself and say, I'm willing to learn from you. And that when I go to their houses, you know, they even, some of them have no chair for you to sit on. And then they say, oh, our old professor is here. Where do I put her? You know, that old professor is here. Just makes them change and say they want to do things better. They want to listen to you. But you also have to say, I want to listen to you as well. So it's some of the things, these things that are not written, you know, I pass them on to the young people that I work with, and so that that legacy can be there. And during now where we are now, with the corona has come. The corona has come. And I realized very quickly that I had to sit at home. It found me here in Kenya, fortunately. My last flight was at the end of January from Kigali. And Kigali already had the signs. They were preparing for something, but Kenya wasn't. So, you know, I said, okay, I'm not going anywhere. I've been quarantined in China before in 2009. H1N1 flu. I was quarantined in China for 6 days. So I said, no, I don't want that experience again. I'm just going to stay here. So being here then, I said, gee, I've never really sat at home. What do I do now? And I'm in that age bracket where we are being told, don't go anywhere, stay in the house. So I started now to make myself useful, collecting information, trying to understand, and also sending it to my friends, you know? Yeah, people in my network, sharing with them, you know, what do you think about this? And this is what I'm hearing, and so on. And that became very useful. And for a while I stopped, and people started coming back to me and said, Ruth, why have you stopped sending me messages? Please tell us, and also tell us about nutrition. What healthy foods should we eat, you know? And then I would tell them, hydrate yourselves, make sure you stay active. You will come out having put on weight. You know, these are the foods. Make sure you enjoy good sunshine, and so on and so forth. And it's just been an amazing story right now. But why is it possible that I'm able to do this also? I was telling myself that one time I was a professor Then I got into parliament, and all of a sudden I was honorable. So it's like they were valuing being honorable to being professor. So many times I call myself honorable professor. So they know that I have the legal, the parliamentary aspect, the legislative aspect, which they take seriously here, but also have the knowledge of a professor. And so that has made it possible for me. It's not like I'm bragging, but it's not made it possible for me to be an influencer. You know, that's how you describe someone who's an influencer. You know, people tell you, if you say this, they listen. People will take you seriously, as opposed to if I say it. And sometimes I've written things on Facebook and someone tells me, but put it in the newspaper. So I repackage it and then I put it in the newspaper. And then you feel like actually someone is listening. Or the Ministry of Agriculture calls me and says, Ruth, we want to start kitchen gardens, 1 million of them all over the country. Help us, help us. What shall we put in there? Or we want to give advisory on foods. What should we do about it? And so, you know, the issue of 3 meals a day is like, okay, 3 meals a day. Where did these 3 meals a day come from? And what is in the 3 meals anyway? So you find yourself talking about dietary diversity, because as time has gone on, our diets are very monotonous. Too much starch, very little vegetable, and that's not the diet I grew up on, yeah, during my time. Yeah, but now things are different. And then now with the internet also, young people just Google, you know, you can Google a diet, you know, it tells you bananas are rich in vitamin C, which is not true. I mean, so you can find anything in Google, yeah? So we still have to do a lot. So now going forward then, I just feel like we are not going to get rid of hunger and malnutrition in Africa very soon. Our governance is very bad. Yeah, it's not like we lack resources. They are not properly distributed. Our leaders are not caring enough. They are not interested in doing that. Right now in Kenya, it's well known now, resources to fight COVID have been diverted elsewhere. We could have had this opportunity to actually make sure every corner of Kenya has good healthcare system. And we could also have made sure that every school in Kenya, we have 18 million school goers, school and college goers. And we're having difficulty reopening because we are not set up to reopen. We don't have proper sanitation. We don't have proper running water, you know, and we don't have proper feeding, you know, and there's a lot we can do with the parents through the schools. And so in our own small way, also in Western Kenya, we got some funding and we work in schools, yeah, together with the parents and with the knowledge of the government. And we have a few schools, you know, where we go and we involve the children to actually in the farming, in running the business. And ordinarily the school farms will be used to grow food for the teachers, but the students now take it over and they use it and they sell to the school and they are able to generate resources. They can buy a child uniform who comes from a poor home. But we also now, we had a project which didn't get much funding, but a beautiful idea with a former student who is at UCLA Berkeley, making sure we connect the children with their families. And that went so well. So there's a lot one can do at the ground level, especially if you want to be transformative. You have to really touch people. You have to be right there. And when I've been in these big summits, you know, and I've attended so many meetings internationally, I'm invited to speak. And many times, maybe I'm the only one from Africa or maybe from Kenya. And I feel like, oh, you know, I have to go and represent them. But I look at the end, I always come back and say, but what difference does it make on the ground? My people are still as poor as always, you know? What difference does it make? And so, but we had made some headway. One time we had a big famine, and then I got funding from Canada, CCDS Canada, and it was focused on gender. gender, not just women, but men and women. That's one project that did so well. It was just a rapid project, you know, it was so well, it's so good. I go back and the farmers still say, if you bring us back that project, you know, our men at least value us, and our men were able to help us do the work that we do. And, you know, so you struggle to get funding. You are too small to get big funding, but at the same time, you are not taken seriously. And the donors give our governments a lot of money, which don't have impact on the ground. So going forward, I can tell you this, and I continue to do this. Right now, we have some German funding to work in one county, and it is on the right to food. Because when we were working on the Kenyan Constitution, I was part of those who were working on the Kenyan Constitution when I was in the parliament, and I made sure that the right to food is properly spelled out in our Constitution. But spelling it out, actualizing it, has been difficult. But thank God now we have this funding to try out in one county. And you know what we are finding out from the farmers, from people in remote areas, you know, it's like they don't even understand what that means. So I just want to tell you that I feel like, yeah, it's like I'm always fundraising, and it's like I'm always begging. This time I was in a begging mode, because it's like everything I've worked for, where I brought farmers to, and where I brought families to, it was now just going down the drain, you know, because there's increased violence, sexual violence, and women are being abused. And yet when I was in parliament, we passed a sexual offenses bill to give minimum sentence to that. But it's like nobody even is thinking about that. So, but working on the ground is the way to go. I'm always inviting, whenever I speak internationally, I invite our friends from the industrialized world, you know, come to Africa. You can do a lot in Africa with very little. You just need to connect with the right people. And so some of the contributions we get, or the donations we get, or the projects we apply for, we don't get a whole lot of money, but at least we make sure we have impact on the ground, because we work with the communities themselves. We involve them, and we make sure that we are transparent, we are accountable, and that we want to see change, positive change. And so as we go forward with this COVID, it's like everybody has been inward, protectionist, but at the end of the day, you know, we can't stay that way. I hope the world opens up quickly, because we need each other. You know, just what you are talking about in Canada, you know, Canada is just amazing. You know what you're doing. You're amazing. You are acknowledging. You should have told me to wear, you didn't tell me to wear orange. I should have worn orange, you know. But for Africa, it's like Ubuntu, you know, it's like social capital. We depend on each other. We have to depend on each other. And depending on each other is really seeing each other as equal partners and as equal human beings. And that's the way to go. And so when you get a chance, just know that there are good people on this continent. There are good people in Kenya, a lot of good people. Our resources are misused, but at the same time, if you think about that too much, then you won't do anything. Yeah, so we look forward to next year, maybe, God willing, that this will be gone, and that we get back to, I'm sure, a new normal. Maybe we shall be cleaner, we shall be washing our hands much better, we shall be eating better, or whatever it is, but we just need to be better people. And I hope that we all have had some reflection on what we are in this world for. What are we here for, really? What are we here for? Yeah, sure, yeah. I'll leave it there so that I can answer some questions. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Leslie. Yeah.
Thank you, Ruth, for that very wide-ranging journey that you share with us. Really appreciate that. There's this virtual applause going on, and I'd like everybody to join me in some actual applause in some way. And I'd like to